How's it going, everybody? It's Riley's Redzone here, back with another football video. And in today's video, I'm taking a look at all of the Week 1 games and predicting who will win each matchup. So I will be doing this every single week and predicting who will win those games. And then we'll keep track of my record for the entire season to see how I did. And so with that being said, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to be discussing every Week 1 game, except for there was already, the season opener. I'll show you here. I did make a tweet. If you follow me on Twitter, I can't guarantee I'm always going to be able to get videos out by that Thursday night game. So if I am unable to do that, the Twitter at Riley Redzone is a great spot. That is where, worst case scenario, if I'm unable to get a video out by Thursday, I will put a tweet out to guarantee my pick. And so, as you can see the tweet in this top corner here, I did predict that the Bucs would win. They did in a very close matchup. I thought it was going to be actually pretty kind of not necessarily a blowout, but I thought there would be a good amount of separation between the Bucs and the Cowboys. But it was actually really, really close. Both offenses looked great. I mean, both defenses made plays when needed, but definitely offense was the star of the show. Dak looked pretty good coming off the injuries, I would say. Tom Brady, of course, looked awesome. It was a really, really good football game. Ended up coming down to the wire. So, although I am 1-0, that was a very good game to start with. So, but that is what already happened. So, that's to recap what has happened. There was that game. So, I do start the season 1-0, which is nice to get that start. Definitely to start having an advantage on the record. So with that game already being talked about, now the rest of these games will be games that I will predict what will happen in these games for who will win. And I'm also looking at the spread and seeing who's favored to really decide, what does the public think as well? Am I picking an underdog perhaps in some of these games? So I'm going to start with the Seahawks and the Colts. So, the Seahawks and the Colts, I think, is going to be a pretty good game. The Seahawks having Russell Wilson and that high-flying offense, I feel like, might be their focus. I know they've been a defensive team for a long time. They still have some good players, with Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. But I feel like now it is more so an emphasis of, are you going to let Russ cook versus are you still the Legion of Boom? I think it's pretty clear at this point they're not what they used to be on defense. They're still okay. You have, as I mentioned, Wagner and Adams and some other players. But now I feel like it's how are you going to use the offense? You have a good running back in Chris Carson, but we've seen at times this team has succeeded throwing the ball downfield. Russell Wilson is one of the best deep throwers in the league. He has some great weapons with Metcalf and Lockett, but are they going to choose to run the ball more? We will have to see on that, but I feel pretty good about the Seahawks team both ways. It does seem like Carson Wentz is healthy for the opener, which does make this a solid game. I think that makes this game very competitive and actually probably one of the better games in Week 1, I would say, given that if he's healthy, that will be a good step up. I do think that the Colts still have some things to work out, with their line, players coming back from injury and Wentz coming back from injury as well. I think that they're a solid team, but right now I feel like the Seahawks just are more overpowered, specifically on, if there's some injuries for that Colts line. And I think their team is overall more balanced. And I think, although I like Indianapolis as a potential playoff team this year, I think it will take some time for everybody to get used to everything on how the system's going to work. So, as you can see in the top left as well, I will put my logo next to the team that I'm choosing. So, in this game, I'm going with the Seahawks. It does look like they are favored by 2.5. I think that seems about right. I will predict, I would realistically think the Seahawks win the game, probably by at least a field goal. So in that situation, I'm figuratively thinking that the Seahawks will win by probably somewhere within a field goal and a touchdown. I think this game will be incredibly close. I think it will be kind of just in the middle. It's not going to be a defensive powerhouse where we're going to get low scores. I also don't think it's going to be super high-flying offenses. So I think somewhere in the middle for this game seems about accurate to me. And so this next game we're going to talk about is the Jaguars and the Texans. Probably the worst combination. Maybe the worst combination of two teams, I would say, on this list. I mean, there's some other ones that are kind of two poor teams, but I would say this is it. Two teams from what, in my opinion, is the worst division in the AFC. It's clear now, of course, the Texans are going with Tyrod Taylor to be their starting quarterback. That's what they've decided. It made sense. Watson's not going to play for them, I would say, at least for a while. I think that it was a good signing for them. He'll be okay. They potentially could win this game. I think the Texans will be terrible this season. If you're in fantasy, if you still have any, well, I guess you wouldn't really have any drafts now, but like in anything, just avoid the Texans because they might be looking at like Chris Conley being their second best receiver, and that is not great. So I just don't think there's enough roster on this Texans team, really. Like, the offense is just not great. And then the defense, they've lost some players. It's just not spectacular either. But the Jags, although on paper I feel like have a better roster, they do have a rookie quarterback being Trevor Lawrence, new head coach. So do the Texans. And I feel like the Jaguars brought in a bunch of new players. That Urban Meyer did what he does, and that's recruiting players. But we haven't seen them all mesh together yet, so I will be interested to see how that potentially works out. I think it might take some time for Jacksonville to really get adjusted to it. But as a 2.5-point favorite, I think that makes sense for the Jags. I do think they will get a win, but I wouldn't be totally shocked. I think this is probably one of the more winnable games on the Texans' schedule. I would probably say this is the game with their highest chance to win. They're at home against a new head coach and a rookie quarterback. I'm not going to rule them out there. I just think the Jags have a better roster, and so I'm going with them. I think it's another situation it's kind of similar to Seahawks, Colts. This one, though, I see being a pretty low-scoring game. Like, I'm feeling like a 17-13, maybe even like a 14-10 type of game. I don't think this is going to be a very exciting one for sure, but I am going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars if I had to pick a team, but I definitely don't think that's a great matchup to watch. The next one we're going to talk about here is the Eagles and the Falcons. These are two teams that are similar. If you haven't been watching my Power Ranking series, you can watch that as well, where I talk about these teams. I still have a lot of teams to go there that I think even though it's getting into the season, I'll do some videos on that. But basically, these are two teams very, very close. I almost felt like after I made the video and everything too, I may be underrating the Falcons in this situation. I feel like potentially, but I feel like they just are a little inexperienced now with the loss of Julio, but then just the offensive line is very young. But I will say that their offense has a very high potential. I do think Ridley is a solid receiver. I think that Kyle Pitts is a huge get for them. I think that they are going to score a lot of points. And in this game, too, where the Eagles have an okay defense, I love their defensive line, but their linebackers is one of the worst rooms, in my opinion, in the entire league. Their corners are not very good besides Darius Slay, and they are not particularly strong in the safety position either. So although if I had to choose right now, although I had the Eagles higher in my power rankings, I think that the Falcons right now, both with another new head coach battle here, I think that they're going to have a better executed game plan, more experience from Arthur Smith. I feel like he will be more impressive week one. I think that as well, Jalen Hurts might need some time for the Eagles. So I expect this one to be a very high-scoring game. I could see this one getting in, where one team, I could see like the Falcons getting into the 30s and the Eagles in the 20s somewhere. Falcons are favored by 3.5. I think that seems about right to me. I would probably think that the Falcons either will lose this game in very close fashion, or I think they'll win by at least a touchdown. I think their offense is going to score a lot of points in this game. So I'm going to go with the Falcons there. The next one we're going to talk about is the Chargers and the Washington football team. I like both of these teams a lot. I think Herbert is going to have an extremely good year this year, in his second year, bouncing, up again. He won Rookie of the Year, but I think that we'll only see more improvement from him this year. So I feel great about their offense with Keenan Allen. Eckler is currently questionable. If he plays, I think that helps their cause. But I just love this Chargers offense specifically. And then their defense is pretty underrated too. I mean, Derwin James is one of the best safeties in football. Getting him back is huge. And you even talk about like them getting Corey Linsley up front. I think that was huge for them. I think that the Chargers might be one of the most underrated teams. And although they're going to have a rookie head coach in Brandon Staley here, a first time for the Chargers, I think that any head coach could succeed with how good this Chargers roster is. I do like Washington a lot. I am interested here, fascinated by seeing that the Chargers are only favored by 1. I like Washington a lot. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're by far the best team in the NFC East. But although Fitzpatrick is an upgrade over what they had, it's not like he is phenomenal, in my opinion. So I would say that he doesn't take them over the top of what they already kind of were last year, just a little bit better. And I really, if you take where both these teams were at last year, I just see a huge improvement from the Chargers versus the improvement I see from Washington. So I'm going with the Chargers here. They're only favored to win by 1. I think this team wins by at least a touchdown, in my opinion. I think this will be a high-scoring game. Washington has a good defense, but I think just both teams are going to be high-flying offenses in this game. So I think the Chargers win by a good amount there, actually, even though I like the football team a lot. Let's talk about the Steelers-Bills. This might be, it's them and maybe like the Packers-Saints is pretty good, Browns-Chiefs, but like besides that, I think this might be one of the best games of the week. I just think it comes down to who is better between, I think Pittsburgh, I talked about it in my last roster breakdown. I think that their defense, for starting wise, might be the best in the league. They don't have a whole ton of depth, but I think their defense might still be the best in the league. Buffalo, though, and I talked about it in my predictions video for the whole season. I get a good feeling from Buffalo. I think their offense is unbelievable. They take a step up on defense. I think that Josh Allen is going to have a borderline MVP. If not, I would probably predict him to win the MVP this year. I do think he's going to be absolutely solid. And you look at the weapons around him, if they can just get something out of Singletary or Zach Moss, then having Diggs, Beasley, and then between Emmanuel Sanders was a great pickup, but Gabriel Davis, I feel like, might be a very underrated player. I think their offense is just too good, and as I mentioned, an improved defense with stars like Tre'Davious White. I think that this team is bound for at least a Super Bowl appearance in the coming years here. They still have to beat Kansas City to get there, but I like Buffalo a lot this year, so I'm going with them. It looks like to me they're favored by 6.5. That shocks me compared to what somebody like. Give me the Chargers. I'm shocked that the Chargers are only favored to beat the football team by 1, and the Bills are favored to win by 6.5. I think the Bills win this game, but I don't know about that much. I think it's going to be close. I mean, it might be that much, but let's talk about the 49ers and the Lions. This is intriguing. Wow, I think this is the largest spread for this game. It looks like to me for this week, I'm double checking. The Niners are favored by 7.5. And, that kind of seems right, I guess. I like the Detroit Lions this year compared to what other people do. I think that they are going to actually be pretty underrated. I think Dan Campbell brings a presence with motivation that we've seen work with guys like Mike Vrabel, where he doesn't necessarily offer anything play calling wise, but he has the right mindset and can get people to buy into the team. And so I think the Lions will actually be underrated this year, but the Niners are a playoff team. I do think by the end of the season, they'll end up going with Trey Lance, but for right now, Garoppolo will be fine. I like Shanahan in that offense. And then on defense, getting Nick Bosa back, having some other great players. I think they're really, really good. And I think they're going to eventually go with Trey Lance, but for right now, I think Garoppolo in that offense is fine. And yeah, I think they will beat the Lions. I don't know about them being the biggest spread this week out of any game. Not so sure about that part, but it probably will be about 7.5. Realistically, I think this might be one of the bigger blowouts, but I don't know about the biggest spread of the week. Another potential, I think the Vikings are going to take a win here against the Bengals. I mean, we've seen some rough stuff from the Bengals recently. I like Burrow a lot, but he's still recovering from that injury, and he doesn't seem 100% to me. But then Jamar Chase, and I know this is way early. They haven't even played a snap. But if we're going anything off of preseason, off of quotes, gotta say, I was hyping up the whole draft season when I made that video of Jamar Chase versus Devontae Smith. I had Devontae Smith ahead of Jamar Chase, and right now I'm liking that comparison between the two, because right now Devontae Smith looks like he could be a number one for the Eagles. I'm not thinking Jamar Chase is barely going to get on the field for the Bengals almost. If you're needing something, you're going to need Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, in my opinion, that are more secure, and you're just going to try to get Jamar Chase in there, but he's not even a top 2 receiver, I would say, right now on their team. So pair that with the rusty quarterback. Nothing against Joe Burrow. I think he's absolutely great, but I'm saying this very moment, for probably the first few weeks, he is going to be a bit rusty. I think they're struggling on offense. I don't love Bengals defense. The Vikings, although I don't have them in the playoffs, I think that they've improved on both sides of the ball, so it's kind of hard to say how can they regress when you've only gotten better, and it's specifically on that defensive side. They're a totally different defensive team than what they were last year. So I think that the Minnesota Vikings get a win over the Bengals. The spread is 3 right now for the Vikings. I will definitely think the Vikings will win by more than that, personally. So I'm going to go with that there for the Vikings-Bengals. Then an interesting one here, the Sam Darnold Bowl is basically what you could probably call this one. The Panthers trade for Sam Darnold from the Jets here, and I think that it was a good move. I think that although Sam Darnold is not what he was coming out of USC, he's never going to be that top quarterback anymore. It's pretty clear at this point. I think it's a solid idea for him to change scenery and perhaps, rebound a bit on his career. So I think that Matt Rule right now, I like Robert Saleh, but I think Matt Rule is one of the best upcoming coaches. So I'm going to go with Sam Darnold and that offense with Robbie Anderson versus Zach Wilson, who I like a lot. I think he will be very, very successful in the National Football League, but I'm going with the Panthers over the Jets for this week's game. I think that just Darnold has a good enough game, and their defense, Brian Burns is a stud. I think he's going to be a game changer. Jets are also, they had the injury for Carl Lawson. They're down some injuries. I think that overall the Panthers are going to get a win there. The next one I have here is the Cardinals and the Titans. Both are solid teams. But I'm pretty much all in on the Cardinals this year. I think they're going to be very, very good. I thought they would step up last year. They didn't really. This is a make or break it year for Cliff Kingsbury, and I think that they're going to make it with Kyler Murray. They bring in J.J. Watt, and opposite him, Chandler Jones. Other positions are still relatively decent. So, in my opinion, I think that the Cardinals take a huge step up this year, and I'm picking them week 1. Now, I do think this will be a very, very close game. I love the Titans bringing in Julio Jones. I think that will be very, very close. But at the moment, I would have to say the Cardinals have a higher ceiling. I think that the Titans' offense runs through Derrick Henry, and then they build off of that with the play action to Julio and A.J. Brown, versus the Cardinals are just going to go out there and sling the football with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm going to go with that style offense for this week. Both defenses are in different spots. I think the Titans have one of the kind of weakest corner rooms for sure, I would say, but then just kind of a lacking defense, and I think the Cardinals have a pretty solid one. So I'm going with the Cardinals there. The Titans are actually favored by 3. So that's my first upset pick of the season, is the Cardinals over the Titans would be my choice there. Then it's the Browns and the Chiefs. Both, I think, are really, really solid teams. I think they'll both be contenders in the AFC. In my playoff predictions video, if I'm not mistaken, I think I for sure had Chiefs and Bills in the AFC Championship, but I think I would have maybe had the Browns as like my third team in the AFC. So I think that the Browns are solid, but Kansas City is so good. I think this will be a very, very close one. It was very, very close in the playoffs. Cleveland was a few plays away from beating Kansas City, so I think that this will actually be a very close one. Kansas City's favored by 6.5. I think that's a bit much. I would actually think this might come down to like a field goal, but I am going to go with the Chiefs. Just the roster's too good. The offense is returning. I think that although the Browns are greatly improved and I believe in them a lot, I think there's just the power of the Chiefs is too much. I think they're favored there by 2. Just their roster is too much for what pretty much any team, but for what the Browns can do on defense. The Dolphins-Patriots is a very interesting game. We got Tua versus Mac Jones. Very interesting. You know that the Patriots are going Mac Jones. I was not a huge fan of Mac Jones coming out of Alabama this year. I would say I was just kind of in the middle on him. I thought he was, by the end of the process, I thought he was a late first-round guy. But I credit New England not trading up for him and just letting him fall. I think that made a lot of sense for them, and it ends up working out. So Miami can be a tricky team for New England, especially with a rookie quarterback. That could be a recipe for disaster, but to me that more happens when they're in Miami. So I'm going to go with the Patriots here. I think that even with a rookie quarterback, I had them making the playoffs. I think I had them making the second round too, I think they're going to be a threat in the AFC to almost anybody. So I'm going to go with him. I like Tua a lot, but I don't know about this year being the year he steps up. I still need to see some more. So I think I'm going to go with the Patriots here. They're favored by 2.5. I think it's going to be a pretty close one here for the Patriots and Dolphins. I think that seems about right to me. Broncos, Giants, these are two struggling teams. I think this year, Denver, a change at the quarterback position, now going Teddy Bridgewater. The higher upside is with Drew Lock. The base and floor is with Teddy Bridgewater. And it really comes down to, I think like Denver this year has a Super Bowl. Not even playoff level, but a Super Bowl perhaps level defense. I mean, Bradley Chubb and Von Miller is an unbelievable combo. I liked them spending some money at the corner position this offseason. Justin Simmons, one of the best safeties in the league. I think that they have an absolutely stacked defense, and if they had a better quarterback, they could go to the playoffs and farther. And I talked about where basically, if you were going to go with Drew Lock, you just need him to not lose games. And I think they've not seen enough from him to prove that he can be consistent every week. It's about the consistency. And Teddy Bridgewater is the definition of consistency. He's never going to do anything crazy on a week-to-week basis where he's going to win you football games. But he's not going to make bad turnovers that lose you the game. And that's what Drew Lock has been doing. So I think that's an improvement for them. As I mentioned, you basically have like a top 5 defense paired with now a decent quarterback. I would rather have Teddy Bridgewater than Daniel Jones. I'm just not in it with Daniel Jones. I think he will improve again this year. But I think you're getting a Trubisky situation here in New York where he's good enough to where you don't want him to go because then you kind of have to restart. But I think that in a matter of years, you basically need to reset the clock just because I don't think Daniel Jones is the option here at quarterback. So I'm going to go with the Broncos. I just think the defense is too much, especially with some injuries for the Giants right now with Saquon and Kenny Golladay both kind of banged up. I don't really like that. It does come down here, though. I'm looking at the spread. Denver's favored by 3. I think they win by probably more than that, but it's probably going to be a close game for that one. Then one of the better games of the week, the Packers-Saints. Although the Packers just made it to the NFC Championship, don't rule out the Saints. I like Jameis Winston a lot to be their quarterback, and but I just think the Packers are still too much. I mean, they lost some huge pieces. They did gain Randall Cobb back, but I think losing Corey Linsley was huge, and that is a big hit for them. But they, I think, just still have enough good players. And then the Saints, I like Jameis Winston, as I mentioned, but they are changing the quarterback position, so I think they'll need a bit of a time as well. But I think this will be one of the best games of the entire week, I think. So I am going to go with the Packers here, but I think that will be relatively close. The Packers are favored by 4. That seems about right. I think this is going to come down to the wire, and we'll see if Jameis or A-Rod can deliver. I think Aaron Rodgers, though, clearly would if given the opportunity. So I'm going to go with the Packers there. Then the last 2 games, we got Sunday Night Football. Bears versus Rams, the second largest spread this week. The Rams are favored by 7, and I agree with that. I have them as my number 2 seed in the NFC. I think with Stafford, I love them bringing him in. The upside there now is just absolutely phenomenal. You bring a team that had Jared Goff, who honestly is just a system QB, a game manager, and that's nothing against Jared Goff is a good quarterback, but I feel like they made it to the Super Bowl with that, but it's just like when the Vikings had like Case Keenum, where they knew, okay, we can succeed with him, but we can't get over the hump. And that's what I think getting Matthew Stafford means, is now they have a high-flying, high-upside offense with Woods and Kupp. I think that's going to be really good for them on the offense, and to still have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. I absolutely love the Rams as a team. I don't know. I guess I still kind of think that Justin Fields should start for the Bears, but I can understand starting Andy Dalton right away. I mean, this is going to be a tough game, and unfortunately for Andy Dalton, I think that's a bad way to start because he's playing a super tough defense right away, which might open the door for Justin Fields to get in eventually, but I'm going to take the Rams here. I don't know if it's going to be... I think 7 actually might be pretty accurate. I think this will be a pretty clear win for the Rams in this one. And to close out this video, let's talk about the Ravens and the Raiders. I think the Raiders, I almost lowered them. I think they're one of the 2... I've thought about, even since making the video, lowering them to number 31 on the rankings. I just don't think that this team is very good. Just built-wise, there's no upside to the Raiders. It is all a little bit of older players, a little bit of younger players with not much upside, and I just don't think that's going to work out. And then the Ravens, although they are they're a nursing home at this point. This is not good. They have lost 3 running backs in the past week, and Marcus Peters. I don't like that at all, but I still think that Lamar is good enough to get this team a win, and they'll make something happen. But I do think that the Ravens will be hurt with those injuries, but I think they're good enough to beat the Raiders, in my opinion. The Raiders are one of the worst teams in football. So the spread, it looks like to me, is Raiders minus 4.5, Ravens, minus 4.5. I think the Ravens win by more than that. So those are my picks for the week. We'll see what happens. As I mentioned in the beginning, I can't always guarantee a video out by the Thursday game, but I will always, make sure to get it out by the Sunday. This one I'm uploading on a Saturday, but we'll see what kind of happens here. So hopefully I do well in the rankings, basically the record overall this week, and we'll just see what happens starting 1-0. But then there's another 15 games to predict, so we'll see what my record ends up being, and I will see you in the next video.